'Twas the week after Christmas, and all through my room nothing would fit me, not even Fruit of the Loom. The cookies I'd nibble, the eggnog I'd taste, all the holiday parties had gone to my waist. When I got on the scales, there arose such a number. When I walked to the store, less a walk than a lumber. I'd remembered the marvelous meals I'd prepared, the gravies and sauces and beef nicely rared, the wine and the rum balls, the bread and the cheese, and the way I'd never said, no thank you, please. As I dressed myself in my old cardinal shirt and prepared once again to battle the dirt, I said to myself as only I can, you can't spend the winter dressed like a fan. So away with the last of the sour cream dip. Get rid of the fruitcake, every cracker and chip. Every last bit of food that I like must be banished until all the additional ounces have vanished. I won't have a cookie, not even a lick. I'll only want to chew on a long celery stick. I won't have hot biscuits or cornbread or pie. I'll munch on a carrot and quietly cry. I'm hungry, I'm lonesome, and life is a bore. But isn't that what January's for? Unable to giggle, no longer a riot. Happy New Year's to all, and to all a good diet. I came upon that a couple of years ago, and it was actually written from the perspective of a woman. So I had to change it a bit because the words blouse and slacks and skirts really doesn't kind of fit. So I had to change a few things. But I love that poem. It is my favorite poem. It takes the night before Christmas and just, yeah, it's all truth. Yeah, because, yeah, I know I'll munch on a carrot and quietly cry is just about the whole gist of it. But this time of year, we talk about resolutions and renewals, and we talk about goals, and we all make a renewal or a resolution, and we're gonna do such and such this year. I'm gonna lose 100 pounds this year, or I'm gonna run a marathon, or whatever the case may be. We always kind of set these goals for the New Year's, but the problem is that resolutions kind of carry this negative connotations. I wrote about this in the Beacon this month, that very, very few people, a very small percentage of people actually make it past the first 2 weeks. And the statistics get worse from there. And then, I kind of proposed in that little article that we should be doing a renewal instead of a resolution. The theme this year, today, well, it's supposed to be last week, but this was the joke last week. I came over, and I'm sitting here thinking, going, my theme this year, or God's theme this year, is on the move. That's kind of the theme for the church this year is we're going on the move, and yet nobody can move. We're all snowed in. Very funny. I'm not laughing. But no, I mean, it's Vision Sunday. And I wanted to not skip over this sermon because every sermon that I do this year, everything that we do as far as activities, everything that we do is centered around this sermon right here. It's centered around 2014. It's the Vision Sunday. The theme this year that God's kind of given me is on the move. And you need to know that this is not something that because a little bit later I'm going to go through the vision for this year. It's not something that was just kind of born out of thin air. God has kind of developed this in me over the course of a year, and the elders have seen this develop in our elders meetings and the direction that we're getting in the prayer meetings and everything that's going on. And God gives this direction, and as I went to the preaching retreat in early December, I lined out all my sermons, and I had this sermon scheduled, and I'm like, all right, so what's the theme? So I looked at all my sermons, and I read things over. I'm like, you know what? It's on the move. Because last year was a year of transition. A lot of change last year in 2013. A lot of change. Not only for me, but for you guys too. And I just, if last year was change and transition, then this year is the year we go on the move. Because this is the year things kind of start to get in gear. And the first passage that came to my mind was Abraham. In Genesis 12, she read the first 3 verses. I'm going to go to Genesis 12 and kind of read that whole passage there, 1 to 9. The Lord said to Abram, "Go out from your land and your relatives and your father's house to the land I will show you, and I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went, and as the Lord told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all his possessions they had accumulated and all the people he'd acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the site of Shechem at the oak of Moreh. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land, but the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your offspring. So he built an altar there to the Lord, who had appeared to him. From there, he moved on to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and worshipped him. Then Abraham journeyed by stages to the Negev. I've got a series of maps up here. The first one is a map of Ur. This is where Abram kind of started out. It says a few verses earlier in chapter 11 that he was from the land of Ur. Ur is actually just on the south side. That river right there is the Euphrates River, and that's actually in it's a town called Nasiriyah, Iraq. The actual site of Ur is in the middle of a desert just north of an Iraqi air base. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a bunch of ruins if you look it up on Google Maps. It literally is it's just a bunch of ruins. And it's just north of an air base, so access to it is probably quite limited. But this is where Abram started out. This is as you can see by the big map up there, it's all the way almost over to Kuwait and the Persian Gulf down there. It is all the way over there. Now the next slide is the land of Haran. Haran is north. That is still the Euphrates River right there on the south side. Haran is that red dot. No longer Iraq, that is now Turkey. And the town is actually still there. It's still called Haran. It's spelled with 2 R's instead of 1, like it is in the biblical days. This is where it was in chapter 12. This is where he was when he set out. Because what they did is they navigated the Euphrates River. Being in the desert and having herds and flocks, you navigate along the river. And that's exactly what they were doing. They have several hundred miles worth of navigating up and down the river in their territories. And this is where he was when he set out. Now the next slide is the land of Shechem. This is where he is. And actually that is Mount Ebal, and then there's another Mount Gerizim is just south of that. And you can actually find that place on the map. You can go to Google Maps and find all these places. That's how I found them. And then I went to Bible Atlas to find the maps that I needed. But you can find all of this on the map. I like to show maps because maps put it in real time and space. I've said that before, but I like putting it in real time and real space. And if you take a look at just how long of a journey, the man was 75 years old when he went out on this journey. Some of you are there, some of you are not quite there. Could you imagine taking a journey at that age, that far? You're walking. Abram had set out and God gives this promise. He's like, Go, and I'm gonna just take you to a land that you don't know. Just go. Shoo. Bye. I'll let you know when you're there. And Abraham, what an amount of faith that has to have to go on a journey like that. Because he just set out with there was nothing. I mean, it was just God telling him, I've called you, this is my purpose, now go. And the reason that when I think of our vision, on the move, Abraham was a stranger in the land. I can't imagine what was going through his mind and the faith that it took for him to up and go and just leave. Abandon everything he knows to go on this journey. It's only his family, and his servants and his slaves, but it's him. And he's following he's following the word of the Lord on pure faith. Because this has happened with Noah. But I mean, at this point in time, who? A few. They walked with the Lord. But there was a definite uncertainty of what lies ahead. You weren't really sure what was coming. God gives you basic instructions, but nothing is set in stone. Nothing's set in stone. Because God's always on the move. You see, God's always giving us just enough information of what we need to accomplish the task that we've got. And He'll give you a little bit more information. He'll give you a little bit more information. Because the more time that Abram walked with God, the more God revealed His plan. The more God revealed everything that was going to be ahead. The main idea is that Abraham had to trust in God. And as we lay out this vision for this next year, understand that the piece of paper that you have in front of you is a work in progress. I developed one for the year of 2013. I didn't get here till 4 months, 5 months of the year had already 4 months of the year had passed. But it's a work in progress. You see, we get just enough information to accomplish the task at hand. And then God gives a little bit more, and He gives a little bit more until the full vision finally comes around and we can actually see it. This year is all about going on the move. God has laid a vision out before us. You see, Abraham was a stranger in the land of Canaan. He was a stranger there. He knew nobody. Now, there's one advantage we have over Abram, and that's the fact that we do know the town. But like I was talking with Jim and Marilyn on Friday, people don't neighbor anymore. They don't. They're not interested in what their neighbor is up to or caring for their neighbor. When I was a kid, we had a Grandma Hartman, not really a grandma. And that's just my point. Not really my grandma, but she was my grandma. It was Grandma Hartman, just catty corner from us on the northwest side of the house. And we borrowed sugar and traded recipes, and we neighbored with people. The people next door, and the guy next door on the north side was a farmer, Mr. Steele. He had 5 of the 6 lots next to us. He farmed, raised chickens. So, it's just people don't neighbor anymore. I hesitate a little bit in saying that we're strangers in the land, but we really kind of are, because we don't know our neighbors. I remember a story. We lived in St. Louis, and there was a news story. I don't even remember when this was, but there was a news story. There was a guy who had lit a fire in his house. The fire department and the police department came. And the guy took his rifle and shot a couple of firefighters, killed them, killed a police officer or 2. And they let the house burn to the ground. You've already shot 2 of our guys. Why would we go and try and keep the house from burning down? After it was all done, said and done, the man actually had died in the fire. And the television, like clockwork, the television stations went around and interviewed the neighbors. You know what the first thing they said was? Well, you always saw him come and go, but we really didn't know him. If you knew your neighbors, you might just have a clue. It's why we neighbor. It's why we get to know people, because unless we get to know people, we can't save them. Okay? Maybe if those, I don't know what the situation was in those neighborhoods, but especially in bigger cities. I mean, it's even filtering down into the smaller cities now, but even in the bigger, oh yeah, it's prevalent. People don't talk to each other. But this work is a work in progress, and we are kind of strangers in the land. The methods that we used 50 years ago aren't going to work anymore. I've said this in the evangelism series last year. The days of cold calling, knocking on our neighbors' doors and inviting them to church is over. It's just not going to work because people don't neighbor. We don't want to be bothered. We kind of hold up our little secrets inside of our own home, and we don't want to let anybody in our little world. But as we lay out the vision, understand that this is a big work in progress, and it's probably going to change as the year goes on. It's probably going to change. It's not probably going to, it's going to change. I mean, just as things continue to develop, it's going to change. And the best way to keep up with what's going on is to be at the board meetings. Yes, I'm plugging the board meetings in the sermon, but I'm telling you, it is the absolute best way to stay up to date with what's going on. Because that's where decisions are made. I give my report on what's going on. I know board meetings are dry. I don't like them either. I really don't. I hate meetings. I am not a meeting guy. I don't like meetings at all. But I'm telling you, it is the single best way to keep up with what the vision is going on here at this church. It is the single best way to keep up to date with what is going on. It is the best way to do it. And every congregation I've ever been in, only the board members show up. And I preach to the congregation, well, you wonder why you don't know anything going on? It's because you're not at the board meetings. You want to know what's going on? Be involved in the meetings. Yes, we're a congregation. No, only the board members have a vote, but you have a say in those votes. You have an opinion. Now, I don't want to see these turn into knockdown dragouts because Lord knows board meetings have been there, done that. But we need to be actively involved in this process. And if we're not going to be actively involved in it, then we have no business being there. What are we really doing? A friend of mine, his congregation, we Skyped this week, and he had a really interesting board meeting, and we were talking about it, and he is going through all of this stuff, and as he's talking, I'm getting this mental picture in my mind of the situation that his church is facing. Sir, I said, your congregation is at a precipice. The next few decisions will either carry them over the edge into closure, or they will turn around and repent, and they will go back up the hill, so to speak, growth and repentance and stuff like that. The problem is, in the board meeting, was that the church has been in decline for 3 years, and yet the board has done nothing about it. The leadership did nothing about it. They haven't addressed the issue. They skirt the issue. And the more I thought about this, the more I realized this isn't just one or two churches. This is an epidemic across the whole board. And I got to thinking about the book that I've written. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm talking about in the book. We're more focused on the bottom line and profits and keeping the doors open than we are about reaching the people in this town. That is the problem in every church across the America. We're too worried about how to keep those doors open. If you're more worried about the people outside of those doors, then we will grow. God will bless it. The doors will stay open. We'll have money to flow around. But that's the problem in America, is that we don't address the problem at hand. We try to skirt around the issues because we don't want to deal with it. I'm really good at that. But there comes a time when you're standing at the precipice and every church is no more than a couple of decisions away from going straight over that cliff. We're never more than just a couple of decisions away from it. You know, and I got to thinking about our church, and we're kind of at that situation here too. You know, we're at that precipice. Either the next few decisions will carry us over the cliff, or we're going to turn around and go back up the hill, because that is the calling that I have. I have a calling to these kinds of churches that are standing at these precipices. They stand at these cliffs, and we're either going to go over the edge, or we're going to turn around in repentance and go back up. It's one of the two. There's only two ways. You know, and that's I get to thinking about that, and it's frustrating because especially the past two churches, it's been very frustrating. You know, I'm finally at a church where people care and they're getting involved, and I'm seeing the results of that. That's awesome. This is the first time I've seen it, and that is a great thing. But yes, it is frustrating at times, and yes, it is maddening. You feel like you're beating your head up against the wall. But my encouragement, not just to myself, but to my brothers who are in these situations with me at the various churches across the country, is that this is what God's called you to. It's what God's called us to. We have to fight the fight, because America is going to continue to go down the path it's going to. It is like a steamroller heading down, and there ain't nothing going to stop this country from going down where it's going. But at least we can help our community out while we're at it. And maybe we can save a few others. So, as we go through this vision, the first 30 days, by the end of January, we're already kind of halfway through January, but one of the first things we're going to do this year is we're going to contact the missions team. We're going to get a missions team together, and we're going to have at least one meeting this month to realign our missions. This is something that the elders and I have been talking about for quite a while. And I said the first of the year, when we start afresh, we have got to reevaluate our missions, because a lot of our missions are, they're a long ways away. And there's nothing wrong with a mission that is long ways away, because I've got several missionary friends, and they're great to support these kind of things. But we need to get stuff that we can actually be involved in. We need to be able to get our hands dirty in this kind of stuff, like the women's shelter. You know, everybody, those are on Facebook. Do you see the pictures from we went out to the women's shelter and to the nursing home? These are the kind of ministries that we're talking about supporting. You know, the women's shelter. What's that youth? The youth outreach. Yeah, Youth Service Bureau. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, the Youth Service Bureau is another one of the ones that I had kind of in the back of my mind, maybe of supporting missions that we can actually get involved in. Okay, it's why the food pantry. You know, I mean, it's kind of why God's laid this on us. Okay, so get the missions team together and start to bring into focus the local missions that we can actually get involved in. You know, Hanging Rock. Let's get more active at Hanging Rock. This is the camp that we utilize and our kids go to, which, by the way, is a wonderful camp. I love it. Number 2, movie nights begin this month on the 18th. We've got licenses, we've got permissions. You know, plaster this thing all over the place. You know, we spent $400 for a license for Pure Flix. I don't have to worry about the content. There's no sexuality in it that's going to upset anything. The heaviest themes are like the movies about Revelation. Those are the heaviest themed out there, and there's a little bit of violence in them, but those aren't the movies that we're going to show. You know, the movie this month is Me Again. It's about a pastor who finds himself beating himself up and wishing he had a different life. And God allows him to transform into the different bodies of the people whom he's affected. Oh, yeah, it's a great movie. And the whole movie is about him discovering the people that he's touched. February is going to be marriage retreat. I encourage all married couples to be at that movie because you will get a free copy of the movie, and we're going to do a dinner too. So, but these are the kind of things, the movie nights that we're going to do. We're going to hold a leadership development seminar sometime in January or February. There's all kinds of opportunities going. The thing about the leadership is we need to constantly be developing the leaders. Now, I look around, I look around at the guys sitting in our congregation, and 99% of them are involved in the board or elders in one fashion or another. But the key is that the guys who come into the church and are new members is that we're developing them, is that we're training them to do the job in the future. Because if we're not constantly training our replacements, then we're not going to go anywhere. We've got to constantly be training our replacements. We've got a great leadership, but the problem is our leadership is aging. We need young blood. We've got to have young blood in it. Okay, get some guys in and maybe not make them deacons right away, but at least take them under our wing and show them the ropes. Okay. We need to, we're going to begin the implementation of the food pantry expansion plan. That's already been taking place, but we're going to actually start to look at hold firm dates for these things, once a month, every other week, whatever the case may be. We haven't even decided yet. Okay? But implement this food pantry expansion plan and get it going. We need to constantly be evaluating the youth department, and one of the things that late last year that kind of developed was instead of focusing on youth, we're going to focus on families. Because we need to reach youth, but you know how you reach youth? Through the parents. Because the parents have way more time with them than we ever will. So if you're going to get families into this church, you're going to do it by reaching families. You got to reach out to the families. So our focus more over in the youth department and the entire church is going to be towards families. The American family is, I say it's broken. That's an understatement. That's an understatement. The American family is way beyond broken. I mean, I was raised in church, and I was raised in a divorced home. We've made it okay. We've got to reach these families. Not shun those who have been divorced, but wrap them around with God's loving arms and saying it is never too late for you to come to Christ. I don't care what you've done. It's never too bad. Okay? It's never too bad. From there, we're going to continue to develop these things. By the end of February, we're going to hold another missions team meeting to finalize what missions we're going to support. We're going to evaluate the movie nights. And that's the whole key, is evaluating everything we're doing. That's why I say this is a work in progress. If something doesn't work, we're going to go back to the drawing board and we are going to try again. We can't give up. Just because something doesn't work or hasn't worked in the past doesn't mean that it's not going to work now. We got to try it. Okay? We're going to work on the food pantry. In February, I'm beginning the new members class. It's a 13-week course. For all of those who joined the church in 2013, I got a couple of people back there that around the church who have joined, and I'm inviting anybody who wants to be there. If you want to, it's a Christianity 101 is what it is. It's all it is. We don't have a date or anything, but I need to talk to the people who are going to come to that so that we can get a date picked out. So if you want to attend this thing, you need to get a hold of me. Those who joined the church last year are not exempt. You have to be there. No, but it'll be a great course. It really will. I mean, it's just developing it. I've learned a lot. So it'll be great. It'll be great even for the seasoned believer. We're going to form a team to look at policies and procedures. One of the problems that maybe we've had in the past is that we don't have a set book of how things are done. Not to say that We need to avoid falling into the trap of the Pharisees on this one, but we need to be careful. But we also need to have procedures and policies in place, like for youth. We got to protect our kids, you know. So we've got a youth protection policy now, but we need to develop this stuff. You know, do a SWOT analysis. It's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You know, you go look around the church and what are our strengths and weaknesses? How can we develop these? The SWOT analysis are how we form a vision for the year. You do a couple of these a year and you begin that, you know, that's how you form the vision for the next year. Okay? Evaluate the ministry teams. We're going to take a look at all of the teams that we have, you know, the education department and the missions department and the finance team. We're going to look at all of these teams and we're going to look at how effective they are. Do you meet on a regular basis? Are you doing anything in the community? What are you doing if you do? Do you have any plans to do anything? Any committees that are I don't want to say worthless, but can be lumped together, we're going to streamline it. Is what we're going to do. Instead of having 1,000 different committees, we're going to streamline it and get this thing running more efficiently so we don't have 7,000 meetings to go to, but yet we're still getting all of the work in the church done. We're going to evaluate community outreach. We're going to, you know, bring forth ideas and ways to improve. We're going to evaluate the new missions that we've got. We're going to look at further ways to engage newcomers in discipleship and evangelism. That's the goal, because I believe that's kind of what God has laid before us. I mean, it's not about numbers, but it's about saving people. And the more people that we're bringing in the doors to a church attendance on Sunday, the more apt we are at saving more and more people, because the word of God and the salvation of God spreads by word of mouth. That's how it works. It spreads by word of mouth. And that's how it's going to get done. It's not about the numbers at all. It cannot be about the numbers, financial or attendance. But it is a marker. So we're going on the move this year.